Welcome to the Real Estate Deep Dive with Paul D. Garrison from JP and Associate Realtors. We've all been seeing some of the recent headlines that are actually kind of more terrifying than clarifying. Today, I want to talk to you and kind of highlight these headlines and why it's important to dig a little deeper than just the headlines. So here's a good example of the headlines that I'm talking about. This one's actually from Realtor.com, which is surprising, but it's foreclosures are shooting up. Is it a repeat of early 2000s housing crisis? Unfortunately, a lot of these headlines are meant more as kind of clickbait, or they're meant to entice you to look closer into the article. The danger with these is if you're just reading the headlines, you can definitely get the wrong impression of what's going on. The problem is that oftentimes people will only see the misleading headlines. They don't take the time to actually delve into the information in the articles or look outside of the articles to see what else is going on so they can get a better context of that. This is kind of reflected in this latest study by the University of Michigan on consumer sentiment around, do you think it's a good time to buy a house? If we look back at February of 2020, the answer was about 70% thought it was a good time to buy a house. September of 2020, about 65%. Now, if we look at September of 2021 with this rash of recent articles, you notice that consumer sentiment has dropped down to 29%. So now I know many of you are saying, well, if consumer sentiment's down that much, that's kind of a warning flag. But we need to look at that in context too. A great way to do that is to look at the showing metrics, or the number of monthly showings of new listings. What are buyers actually thinking? Now, while we have seen it drop off from the highs that we saw in March and April, it's still well above most of the levels that we've seen prior. To put that in a little better perspective, as this chart right here shows, let's take a look at the Septembers for the last 5 years, the last 5 Septembers. We know 2020 is hard to judge anything by because with the pandemic happening, it's really kind of skewed the numbers in 2020. So if we go back and look at 2019, 2018, and 2017, we can look at more normal years. And as you can see from this chart, we're still, even though we have leveled off from the highs we saw in March and April, we are still well above those normal years as far as the number of showings and the number of buyers that are out there looking to purchase new homes. So here's another example of a salacious headline. It says mortgage originations will drop 33% in 2022 as interest rates rise, according to industry forecasts. Now, if that was all we saw, we'd actually miss or misunderstand, why is that happening? Are people just buying less houses? Is everything going to drop because interest rates are rising? Well, no. If you actually look, refinance originations will drop by 62% is what they're forecasting. However, mortgage originations for the purpose of buying a home are forecasted to actually rise 9% to a record of $1.73 trillion in 2022. Again, it's important to go past the forecast, get into the key points of the article, and look beyond just the headline. So here's another example from one of our local papers here, the Dallas Morning News. Dallas-Fort Worth foreclosure filings jump as moratorium ends. Well, you don't actually see the sub-headline until you click on the article and actually open up the article. Then you see right below that it says filings are still significantly lower than they were pre-pandemic. And if we actually read into the article, you'll see things like this. Even with the recent increases, Dallas-Fort Worth foreclosures are a tiny fraction of what they were in the Great Recession, when thousands of loans default notices were filed in the area each month, and they are still significantly below pre-pandemic level. The article goes on to state that most of the national foreclosure moratoriums are now over, and less than 3% of the U.S. home loans are still in forbearance. And then the article actually included this chart that shows the number of foreclosure filings in the third quarter of 2021. And it highlights some of the top cities. And while Dallas-Fort Worth made it into the top 13, we only had 638 of those filings in the third quarter. And with that, only 100 were actually filed in September. So again, what I am encouraging you to do is to actually, when you see these headlines, click into the articles. I know that's what they want you to do, but actually read in and understand the context of what's going on with the market. Or better yet, reach out to myself or a agent in your area and find out specifically what's happening in your area. All that said, I do also want to mention that sometimes the headlines go in the opposite direction too. An example of that is this headline where a lot of articles have been reporting about Goldman Sachs saying housing prices will grow another 16% in 2022. This was actually taken out of context. The actual original quote was more of, since starting now through the end of 22, Goldman Sachs is predicting that housing prices will grow 16% in that time period. Not that they're going to grow 16% in 2022. So again, sometimes things can be just taken out of context. So context is key. With that in mind, I wanted to put up the home sales forecast from these experts so we can take a look at kind of what they're predicting for the rest of 2021 and 2022. Because context is key, to put some perspective on this, we sold 6.5 million homes in 2020, which is one of the best years we've had yet. All four of these experts are still forecasting that we're going to have even better home sales for the rest of 2021, and then even profound home sales or better home sales in 2022 as well. Many of the metrics and numbers in this presentation are based off of the national real estate market. However, local areas can vary. Please give me a call and we can discuss your situation. Have questions about your specific needs or location? Please contact me at 214-683-8188 or paul@pauldgarrison.com. Want more information about the housing market and related issues? Be sure and check out my blog at www.pauldgarrison.com. Thank you for your time. Please take a moment to visit our website at www.pauldgarrison.com.